In this lesson, we're going to talk about data file formats, specifically delimited files and flat files. When I talk about a delimited file, these are files in which some form of character is going to be used to separate each field of data from the other data fields. The most common type of this is known as a comma-separated value file, or CSV, and that means we're going to have a comma between each of the fields. So if I want to have a database that's going to store information such as a student ID, a first name, and a last name, that CSV file might look something like this: 1001, comma, Jason, comma, Dion, 1002, comma, Frank, comma, Kane. And this tells me exactly what those three fields are that we are going to be storing. We have the first field that we're expecting as an integer, which is our student ID number. Then we have the second field, which is the student's first name. And then we have the third field, which is going to be the student's last name. And I can have thousands of students in this file, one per line, with a comma separating each of those fields. Now, sometimes you're not going to use a comma-separated file, and instead you'll use a tab-delineated file. This uses a tab, which is 5 spaces, to be able to separate each of the fields in that file. Another kind you might see is something that uses a different character, like a pipe, instead of that comma. For example, later on when we go into the lab environment, Frank is going to show you how we can import data, and you'll see that we use a pipe with some of our data sets to separate those fields instead of using a comma. When you're dealing with the delimited file, you can look at its extension to get an idea of what delimiter is being used. Most commonly, you're going to see a .csv file extension anytime you're using a comma-separated value file, which uses a comma to separate the values on each of the lines to designate the fields. But that being said, you may also open up that file and find there are no commas being used as separators inside that CSV, and instead they're using something like a slash, a quote, or a pipe instead. So always open up your files and look at them before you try to import them into your database so you know what delimiter is being used. In addition to the .csv file format, you'll also come across ones that are .tab or .tsv. This is going to be used when you're dealing with tab-delimited formats and you're using a tab to separate the values in between those different fields. Another one that you'll commonly see is .txt. Now, .txt means it's simply a text file, and that can use any delimiter you want, so it's important to open up that file and look at it before importing it into your database. Now, anytime you get this data out of your database and into one of these formats as a file, we call these a flat file. A flat file is simply any delimited file that is exported out of a database system and can then be sent to somebody else. When you're dealing with a flat file, you're dealing with a tab-separated file, a comma-separated value file, or just a standard text file with any kind of delimiter you want. It's important to realize that when you're dealing with a flat file, this is data that has been exported from the database in real time, but now, every day, it's getting older and older. What I mean by that is, I have a database for all of my student activity, and I can export it to a CSV right now and give you a copy of it. If I did that, that data is only as good as right now when I export it, because even as I'm filming this, more students are accessing our system. More students are signing up. More students are taking exams and watching videos and doing all sorts of other activity, and none of that is going to be captured in the flat file I already gave you. That is all happening live on the database system. So often what you'll see is that flat files are used as a way to back up data or to get a point-in-time snapshot of your database or the results of a certain query from your database. But remember, it's not going to be updated in real time because those flat files are no longer connected to your database.